Hello again from Orange County. Just got out of the water. We did a nice swim here in Newport Beach. There's a goal on the horizon. It's a crazy one. It's the swim from the shores of California all the way out to Catalina Island. Might start with something a little bit shorter, though. Might start with Alcatraz, but more on that later. I think that will be something fun to track. Right now, though, we want to talk 49ers football on the day off. I'll be flying back to the Bay Area early tomorrow morning, be back in time for practice number 10. Practice 10 is on Monday morning. Practice number 11 is on Tuesday morning. 49ers fly on Tuesday afternoon to Las Vegas. Wednesday is a media day and a player's day off. I'm sure they'll have some physical treatment on that day, but there won't be practice in Vegas because they're getting ready to lock and load for Thursday and Friday. Those are joint practices with the Raiders in Henderson, Nevada at the Las Vegas Raiders team facility. So this coming up right now is the pivotal week of training camp. You hear everybody talking about it inside the 49ers building, especially the coaches. They're saying, we can't wait to play somebody else so that position battles within the 49ers roster can finally take a step forward. So players can begin to separate themselves because you can only do so much scrimmaging against your own team and the same schemes and the same players. It's hard to really determine who's excelling and who's not after you repeat that enough times. You have to get to an opponent that is different than the one that you've been squaring off against 9 times, and it's about to be 10 and 11 times for the 49ers in training camp. That's going to be the Raiders. We're going to see a lot of position battles at least crystallized this week. Maybe they won't be fully determined, but they will be much more clear than they have been over the past several days. And here on the day off, I wanted to talk about the biggest jumps so far of 49ers training camp. Which players have made the best improvements from when we last saw them prior to this camp to when we've seen them over the past 9 practices? Because 5 padded practices are now in the books. We can look at this objectively and we can say, I think with a certain level of, definition that, yeah, these players have made big time strides. And yes, one of them is Mr. Trey Lance. In fact, I would say that Trey Lance might be the biggest improvement on this 49ers roster. There are 3 that I'm going to go over. Trey Lance and his accuracy, Javon Kinlaw, who's seen big improvements to his health and his explosiveness because his body has completely changed, and Ty Davis-Price, who he might take the cake, let's be honest. It's going to be tough to beat Ty Davis-Price, but if you had to look at 3 players from the 49ers roster who have made massive improvements, it is these 3. And a lot of players, I think, have impressed us with some of the strides that they've made. But Ty Davis-Price, oh my goodness, some of the stuff his teammates are saying about him. I see him every day out there at practice. Looks like a different player than last year. Javon Kinlaw definitely looks like a different body type than last year, which I really think is important for the health of his knee. But we can start with Trey Lance, because Lance is the biggest deal. It's the most important position. It's, the one that comes under the most scrutiny. Everybody wants to talk about quarterbacks. I think that the Trey Lance that we've seen this year versus the Trey Lance that we've saw in the past has been night and day different in terms of accuracy. Now, maybe when we say night and day, it's dusk versus broad daylight, because I don't think it's a situation where Trey Lance has fully reached the finish line of the improvements that he needs to make. I know that practices 2 and 3 especially were rough as far as the short game went for Trey Lance. The warm-ups during those practices, he was missing short passes. But something happened, especially after practice 4 or 5, when Lance missed yet another one of those gimmies. He was working after practice on short passes, and he confirmed the other day that that was a direct point of focus. He was getting fed up that these short passes were creating all these trouble. And since then, Trey has been very, very accurate, to the point where I can give you the data. You guys know that I love basing observations on data. This is what the 49ers stats look like as far as completion percentage, touchdowns, and interceptions so far through 9 practices at 2023 camp. Now, the headlining story, the overarching takeaway here is that all 4 quarterbacks have been exceptionally accurate for the 49ers. For perspective, Trey Lance last season in training camp was at about 55%. In 2021, as a rookie, Trey Lance had moved the ball work for the 49ers, completed only 48% of his passes. This year in move the ball work, Trey Lance is about the same as his general completion percentage. That's about 69%. So he's near 70%. That's 15 points higher than last year. and that's almost 20 points higher, or it is 20 points higher. It's 22 points higher than where he was during 2021, his rookie season. So you are definitely seeing a positive trajectory for Trey Lance. I'll put these stats back up there in a second, but first I want you to listen to what I'm saying here. Completion percentage is not a be-all, end-all in practice. I see a lot of people taking my stats and being like, oh, Trey Lance is at 69%, Brock Purdy's only at 65. That means Trey's a better quarterback. No, that is idiocy. That is not what we're looking at here. We're just looking at a ballpark measure of accuracy, because accuracy has been the biggest issue, the most prominent issue that Trey Lance has had to conquer. And if you compare completion percentage from one camp to the next, well, then you can get a general gauge of a quarterback's accuracy. But when you do look at these numbers, it is very, very important to remember that Kyle Shanahan is not just looking at completion percentage. Kyle Shanahan is looking to see where a quarterback should go with the football on every single play. He's looking at the decisions that a quarterback makes, how he sees the field, how he reacts to the pressure coming into the pocket. I mean, it's much more complex than just this. And this is something that I've noticed. I post stats and people think that stats, especially from training camp, simple stats are some kind of be-all, end-all. They're not, but they're a way to gauge accuracy. And I'm here to talk about Trey Lance and his improved. I'm here to talk about Trey Lance and his improved accuracy. Sometimes I X out of my own screen, and that's not good. But we're back to talk about Trey Lance and his improved accuracy. And when I do talk about Lance and accuracy, I like to present the full picture of context. What has he been working on? Where do the 49ers want him to be? How does that relate to the 49ers' other quarterbacks? Well, if we put this back up onto the screen and we look at these stats, I have one more point to make. Brock Purdy's been working against the first team exclusively. So that's the first team defense. That's obviously a degree or a couple degrees more difficult than what the other quarterbacks are having to do. Lance and Darnold, they work against the first team on the days that Purdy misses practice. That's still a relatively small sample, but they work a split job against the second team on other days. And Brandon Allen, who has had a nice few days at 64% now overall, he works against the third team for the 49ers, and he'll work against the twos on the days that Purdy and Lance split duties against the ones. But anyway, let's talk about Trey and his accuracy, because it was a big issue entering the season. We still, considered a big issue early in camp when he was missing some of those short passes, because we could all remember back to Trey Lance's first career action against Seattle in 2021. That was in week 4 of 2021. His first couple passes were really ugly, right? I think it was Juszczyk and George Kittle that he was targeting out of the backfield. Like low, high. It was wild. And we said, oh, man, this guy is a really, really raw prospect. You could probably even go back to the preseason against the Chargers that year to see how raw Trey Lance was. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to put 2 and 2 together and know this. I use this stat a lot, but I'm going to use it again for those of you who haven't heard it. Trey Lance, so far, from his freshman year of college until now, so now he's in his third season in the NFL, right? So go freshman year at North Dakota State until now. That's several years. He has thrown fewer passes than Tom Brady threw in his season at age 45 in the NFL. All those years of Trey Lance, he has attempted less passes than Tom Brady in one season at age 45. So that means that Lance is extremely inexperienced. And the 49ers knew this when they drafted him, but they didn't know that he was going to get hurt twice. And once it totally screwed up his throwing for a whole year with the broken finger in 2021. Then he hurt his ankle. He broke his ankle last year. So he's been essentially on the shelf for 2 seasons. So Lance's development has been not, he started off raw. He started off behind the average NFL quarterback in terms of development, and he has stayed behind and maybe even fallen further behind because of the injuries over the past 2 seasons. So you're not dealing with the typical third-year NFL quarterback. You're dealing with somebody who is very, very raw. Now, I don't use very, very raw in a pejorative, negative sense, because, in fact, I think this is one of the things that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch liked most about Trey Lance coming out of college. They saw a guy who, because he didn't have as many attempts under his belt, was like moldable clay. It wasn't hardened yet. They can develop him into what they needed him to be, right? And this, I think, is an extremely important point because Kyle Shanahan has actually been quoted in the past as saying that accuracy doesn't, just improve overnight or over the years for a quarterback. Usually who a guy is who a guy is as far as accuracy goes, because you could do a bunch of drills in the offseason, but and in a lab, you look like you're much better with your throwing motion. Your mechanics are better. They're much improved, but then you show up, live bullets start flying, and you revert back to your old habits. Shanahan has actually said that he believes that, which is a little counterintuitive, right? Paradoxical to what the 49ers hope from Trey Lance. But I do think that Lance might be an exception, and here's why. Because he's so inexperienced. When you are so raw and there are so few throws under your belt, you are such moldable clay that you can change your habits. There is that room for improvement. They're not so ingrained that you just go back to the same thing over and over and over again. They say if you want to learn a second language, the easiest time to learn the second language is when you're very young, right? My mom spoke Czech to me when I was young. She's from the Czech Republic, used to be Czechoslovakia. I speak fluent Czech. I'm not smart enough to learn Czech right now. Like if I had to learn Czech right now, it would be impossible. It's a very, very hard language to pick up. But since I learned it from basically the time of birth, I believe that my first word was in Czech, not in English. I was able to speak two languages just naturally like that. Well, if a quarterback, by the same principle, if he learns mechanics earlier in his QB life cycle before he has a lot of throws embedded in his brain, in his habits, then he could more easily change his mechanics because nothing's been, set in stone in his brain yet. The brain is still receptive to more information, to new habits. And I think that's where the 49ers view Trey Lance. He's still very, very moldable clay at that quarterback position. So anyway, they draft him out of North Dakota State. He's primarily a running quarterback there, but they do like the passing work that he's done as far as being able to identify where to go with the football in the context of a pro-style offense. So Kyle Shanahan likes Trey Lance's brain. He obviously likes the physical skill set. You don't trade up to number 3 if you don't. But he likes the brain because he thinks that he can take the brain, he can combine it with the physical tools, the running, the throwing, all that. And if he can bridge that gap with improving Trey Lance's mechanics, which obviously were still raw, he can turn him into a really good pocket-style quarterback that operates within the 49ers system. So, long story short, that's the project the 49ers embarked on in 2021. It got delayed by the broken finger against the Raiders. The 49ers faced the Raiders again this week in the joint practices and then in the game on Sunday. That really changed the trajectory of how Lance was developing. He chips his finger on a helmet. The whole year there, 2021, is scuttled. Kyle Shanahan wanted to work him in, run packages, right? He wanted to run a little 2-quarterback offense. That didn't work because Lance didn't have enough of a throwing threat. The whole finger injury lingered because he couldn't properly bend his finger and develop his arm into good enough shape for the entirety of that calendar year. Finally, he got healthy for 2022. And then he fractured the ankle. So here we were entering the 2023 offseason with Trey Lance still rehabbing from the ankle injury and having not really made any progress with his throwing motion and his mechanics to bridge the gap that the 49ers wanted to see bridged mechanically between how smart he is, because the 49ers love that, and how smart he is and how athletic he is. They love both of those two things. But the mechanics needed to be bridged this offseason because it had been delayed for those 2 years. So that's why Trey Lance went to Jeff Christensen. And when you watch Trey Lance before, and I had the side-by-side video, I've posted all kinds of stuff. Mike, if you have the side-by-side video of Trey Lance, send it to me, the one that I posted way back earlier this offseason. I'm going to try to find it really quickly because I think it's worth playing, because this is the work that Lance did with Christensen. You could see what used to be a big looping release. I mean, the ball came down way under his hip. It took too long to get the football out. And I think most significantly, it hurt Trey Lance's accuracy because the longer the release, the more moving pieces there are, the more variables can go wrong. And if you're not doing something the exact same way every single rep, the ball is going to go to different places every single rep. So Christensen was able to take the big looping release and turn it into a much tighter motion right at the top of Trey Lance's body. I mean, he keeps the ball much higher now, and I really wish I could illustrate this with my side-by-side. I'm looking for it on Twitter. It's always frustrating when you have to search for your own tweets and you can't find them. I wish I had gotten this ready right before because it is very, very good. Man, maybe I could search for Trey Lance before and after, because what we're going to see when we do see this is the work that he put in with Christensen this offseason. And I think it's an absolutely staggering difference. And what we've learned here in training camp is that Trey has been able to carry over what he worked on in the lab with Christensen into actual action. Now, I'm not going to call it live action yet because a pass rush can't hit this guy yet. First chance of that's going to be on Sunday. So that's the next step for Trey Lance. But he's taken it further than a lot of people thought he could take it. He's taken that improvement from the lab onto an actual practice field. And that's why we've seen the big, big jump in accuracy. Let me check in. Mike found it. He's downloading it. This is going to be really good. So we're going to have this in a couple seconds. We're going to have the side-by-side. And, I posted this in the offseason. A lot of people scoffed and said, well, it's not going to matter because he's going to revert back to the old ways once training camp starts. Just watch. Just watch once training camp starts. Lance is going to be screwed. It's going to go back to the old looping release, and he's not going to be able to see any advancement in the NFL. I said the opposite. I said, wait, this guy's moldable clay. This guy can still unlearn what he's doing, and he can relearn something new because he's not a quarterback with 5,000 career attempts under his belt. All right, we got it now. I'm downloading, and we are going to put this sucker up on the screen. Here we go. Video file, Trey Lance, side by side. Take a look at this. We could play this over and over again until you get an idea of what's going on. So on the left is Trey Lance before, and that's the looping release. That's coming. I mean, these are synced up. Look how much quicker the ball's coming out. I paused it right there. You could see Jeff Christensen. That's the quarterback's coach on the right. That's Lance working this offseason in TCU. This was the first video that was released from his offseason work. We're just going to play this on loop so you can watch how much faster the release is in the lab this offseason versus what it was in 2022. Left side is 2022. Right side is 2023. Look at that. I mean, this is going to do two things. Pass rushers who come in are going to have a lot harder time knocking the ball away because it's getting out quicker. And two, there are fewer moving pieces. So if you're looping as much as he is on the left, and we pause it again, something can go an inch or two or a centimeter or two off course much more easily than it can on the right when the release is much tighter. Now, we're not even talking about footwork, which is most important to Kyle Shanahan, and supposedly that's improved as well. But look at this throw coming off of Lance's hand so much quicker. I mean, he's knocking tenths of a second, like full chunks off of his release, which is a massive, massive deal at the NFL level. So anyway, we move forward into training camp. Well, first into OTAs, then into camp. Lance has actually maintained that tighter throwing motion throughout both stops. The next test is going to be, can he maintain it when Max Crosby can hit him on Sunday at Allegiant Stadium against the Raiders? But so far, it's been so good because we talk about Lance and his accuracy, and we see the numbers here. This is a general gauge of accuracy. This is the best we can do as far as numbers go. I can also tell you that I've been out at practice, and Trey Lance looks a whole lot more accurate. He's had two of the real drop-in-the-bucket throws of training camp. There was one to Ronnie Bell on a little in pattern. The 49ers released it in their highlight reel. And then there was, he threw the one to Willie Snead yesterday. People saying, oh, it's all Willie Snead. Yes, it was an awesome catch, but still, Trey Lance is putting that ball where only Snead can possibly get it when he's in blanket coverage. He's thrown some good, the slant pattern to Brandon Ayuk the other day. These are throws that Trey Lance was not completing in the past. Not always because he was inaccurate. I mean, he'd be inaccurate, but there'd be less consistency. But the release was slower. And when the release is slower, like right here, if a defense has the situation on the left versus the situation on the right, they're going to be able to break on the pass with a lot more success. A linebacker or a safety playing zone defense is going to be able to start moving toward the football and have an extra 0.3 or 0.4 of a second, which is a big deal when these athletes are so strong in the NFL. He's going to have more time if the quarterback is releasing slower, like Lance is releasing slower on the left. So your completion rate is going to go up naturally when you get rid of the ball quicker because there is less of a chance for a reaction from the defense. And look what's happened. Lance is at 69% so far here through training camp, but 55% last year, 48% in 2021. I don't know about you guys, but to me, that's a positive trend, right? 48 to 55 to 69. Now, let's sit here and put everything into context. The people that are looking, and there's way too many people looking at it like this. The people that are looking at this as Trey Lance versus Brock Purdy, and every single number that you put up for Trey Lance has to somehow be compared to Brock Purdy's, are not dealing in intelligent football analysis. This is not Trey Lance against Brock Purdy. This is Trey Lance and Brock Purdy. Purdy is QB1 for the 49ers. He's put up these numbers against the first-team defense exclusively. Shanahan has made up his mind. That's why you see Purdy working against the first-team defense exclusively. It's not a question in his mind. Shanahan also realizes, though, that even if you know who your top quarterback is, even if you know who you want there, you don't always get your way in the NFL. Last year, the 49ers had Christian McCaffrey taking snaps at QB in the NFC Championship game, for crying out loud. Injuries happen. You need to make the room as deep as possible. So it's a good thing for the 49ers if Purdy keeps on performing as well as he has. And don't get me wrong, Purdy's been really good at training camp. It's a good thing if that continues happening and if Trey Lance continues developing. And, I mean, if you want to expand this argument, it's a great thing if Sam Darnold continues going without throwing a pick, because that's actually happened at 49ers camp. Take a look at Sam Darnold's numbers. 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, 64%. It's also a good thing if Brandon Allen keeps on delivering the way that he's delivering. All of these things work for the 49ers, and Trey Lance improving his accuracy is part of the larger puzzle. You need as many good quarterbacks as possible when you're coming off a season where you ran out of quarterbacks. And the only reason you made it to the NFC Championship game is because you had a lot of capable quarterbacks. So Trey Lance being good for the 49ers and improving the way that he has is excellent for everybody involved. And that includes Brock Purdy, because he wants to win as well. Winning is a good thing for a team building. So Brock Purdy coming off the injury well. Trey Lance throwing accurately. Great. Sam Darnold avoiding huge mistakes. Awesome. Brandon Allen looking like a lot better than QB4. That's also great. But I do have to say that, to me, the biggest, and this is the theme of the video, the biggest 49ers jump so far of training camp, the most notable one, has been the accuracy of Trey Lance. He has ported his work with Jeff Christensen into camp. And now we will see if he can continue to port that work into live action in an actual preseason game. So fun stuff there from Trey Lance. I wonder, do we have the sizzle reel for Trey Lance? Let me see. Yeah, we do here. Cool. Somebody put out a sizzle reel for Trey Lance. I think it's Niner Logic. Yeah, we're going to credit Niner Logic for this, and we're going to share it because this was good stuff. The sizzle reel from Trey Lance during 49ers practice. He's so good with that deep out throw because he's got a strong arm, right? You saw Tame Martin. There's Brandon Ayuk for the deep out. There's a quicker release to Ayuk on a crosser. Braden Willis, the tight end, the rookie out of Oklahoma. He's been good for the 49ers so far this camp. Another out pattern. I mean, Lance has been delivering these with good accuracy. Downfield. Oh, Ayuk skying up for a football. Look, that release is just so much tighter than it was before. I mean, Jeff Christensen said it'd be night and day mechanically, and he was right. He was right. Mechanically, it has been a night and day improvement for Trey Lance. And that's not to say that he's all the way there. I mean, he still has to raise the floor on some of those gimmies, on some of the shorter passes. There's the pass to McLeod. I'm so glad that ends the reel. That's the drop in the bucket pass that I talked about. I'm going to replay this one. So thank you to Niner Logic for this. Look at this. That could only be in one spot. DB is draped all over him. I mean, it's probably PI. I see that right hand on the hip making contact. Obviously, they don't call everything in the NFL. But that pass, and you could see Lance on his follow through there at the left, that pass couldn't be placed any better, and Lance placed it right there. Credit Niner Logic. Go check him out. Just type in Niner Logic on Twitter. He did that little cut up. And the clips are obviously courtesy of the 49ers. So Lance and his accuracy. I know that a lot of you are sick of quarterback talk, but to me, that is the biggest 49ers jump so far of training camp. Another big jump, Javon Kinlaw's health and explosiveness. You take a look at Javon, And I'll video this this week. This reminds me that this is something I still need to get up. In fact, um, Mike, can you get me the 49ers sled drill? It's on the channel. Chris Kasarik and the sled drill. I put that on twice here the past couple of days. We can take a look at Javon Kinlaw's body and the most intense drill, the heartbeat of 49ers practice. Because when you look at Javon Kinlaw, you'll say, wow, okay, this guy was 6'5", like 330, 340 when he came in from South Carolina, but there were persistent knee issues, right? And it's tougher to recover from a knee situation when you're that big and that heavy. I mean, that's a lot of mass to put onto a knee. Yeah, his knee is bigger, the ligaments and everything a little bit bigger and stronger than a normal person. But at some point, the laws of physics come into play, right? And you're coming off a major ACL reconstruction. You're at 330 pounds. You're 6'5", 6'6", like Javon Kinlaw is. He's an enormous human being. It's going to put a little bit more strain on your knee. And maybe that's why we saw so many of the setbacks last year. Maybe why we saw so many of the, just the frustrating turns in Javon Kinlaw's story last year. And you go back to his rookie season. He was developing, and I thought developing well for the 49ers in 2020. But then what happened is that he really hurt his knee bad against the Cowboys. That was late in the year. It's like the second to last game of the season. And I don't know what happened, if it was misdiagnosed or if more damage was done later. But basically, Kinlaw returned in 2021, played early in the year, but his knee was barking at him, was still really bothering him from the severe injury the season before, to the point where the 49ers just shut him down around week 8 or week 9 and said, he's going to get ACL reconstruction surgery. So somewhere between the Cowboys injury and when they shut him down in 2021, the 49ers determined that Javon Kinlaw had a messed up ACL, that they had to repair a torn ACL, which obviously is, those are bad words in the knee injury community, right? Torn ACL, nobody likes to hear that. It's a very serious reconstruction that you have to do. Kinlaw underwent that in 2021. And then he came back in 2022, but there was still a lot of fluid buildup in his knee. He could never really get off to a good start in that season because it would always start barking at him. And it got to the point where the 49ers had to put Kinlaw on IR in 2022. And then they realized he only had a limited amount of snaps in his knee until the fluid started to build up too much again. And they decided to say, hey, come back for the last 3 weeks of the year, see what you can give us. He didn't give the 49ers all too much. I think there was a big goal line run stop. I think it might have been against Washington in that game, maybe against the Raiders. He did some damage, but it was just tough for Javon to play at the level that he wants to play because the knee was acting up again. So again, they shut him down after the season. And this is when we come to 2023. And he went through his longest stretch of healthy football from February to now, of conditioning, of, being able to work on his get off. And he's shown up to camp way, way lighter than he was before. It's a different body type. And now Mike has the video, so we'll put it on out there. Now, this video, we can play some of the audio. So I'm just going to let this play through, and then we're going to talk a little bit about Javon Kinlaw when it's done, because this is the highlight of 49ers training camp. This is, like I said, this is the heartbeat of what happens on the practice field. It is the Chris Kasarik sled corner. So let's go ahead and watch this. Mike, I'm good to play the audio on this, right? Just checking. Am I? Let me know. Give me a thumbs up in our chat away from the YouTube on WhatsApp. But I think we are good to play the audio on it. I'm going to present video file. Here we go.
Oh, give me, hey, since we got two Clemson guys, give me them. Oh, shit! Clemson, walk them back with hold on. Now. Go get them. One of them was a 5-star recruit, one of them was a 3-star recruit. So the boy is 5-star, the boy is 5'6". Here you go. 4-star, coach. Knock your elbow. Knock your fucking elbow. Here you go. Oh. We got 5'6" on 5'7" right here. Who's calling? Who's calling? T.Y. Back out of there. Watch out. Let's go. We got DN versus D tackle. DN versus D tackle. Get that motherfucker. Get out of here. Hey, when it moves, you go. See the star. Fight! D tackles. Give me Marlon. Win. Versus Kerry.
Oh, shit.
Hey, you a D tackle, Marlon, or a DN today?
Oh, he's a hybrid.
What? Here we go. Wags, get in there. Cam, get in there.
Don't get away, like go.
Let's go. Come on, right up that motherfucker. Knock the fucking elbows. Let's go. Lock him up. Go! Here we go.
And that is the drill. I mean, that's the heartbeat of 49ers practice. Now, I'm going to put this back up on there because you notice that Javon Kinlaw went against a defensive end on his rep. And typically, Chris Kasarik was saying D end against D tackle. That means he expects the defensive end to win. It's a get-off drill. And Kinlaw, for whatever reason, didn't react on the first try, and it frustrated Chris Kasarik. But then when he actually had the redo, then he beat the defensive end. Javon Kinlaw got off first, and that's why Chris Kasarik is pointing at Javon Kinlaw, saying the defensive tackle won. That is a good sign for Javon Kinlaw's get off of the football. Let's go back to this without sound. It's Kerry Hyder that he's going against, I believe. Yeah, that's Kerry Hyder. So first try, Kinlaw just stays frozen. I guess he was anticipating a different snap count. Chris Kasarik's like, damn it, you got to go, Javon. And now second try, look at that get off. Javon Kinlaw wins that round. Now, I panned the camera over to Javon Kinlaw. This is probably one of the better looks that we get at him because he's not in the crowd of players. So maybe we can make this a little bit bigger on the screen. Erase my face. There you see Javon, who is looking a lot more like somebody like Eric Armstead now. Not quite as light as Eric Armstead, but he's definitely cut weight, and that's led to the greater explosiveness. And I think that's been better on his knees. I think that's the big deal here. Maybe we could see Javon from, there's Javon. I mean, you could tell he's still a very large human. Big arms. I mean, he's obviously going to be able to forklift people. He's got that upper body strength. Calves still built like pillars of granite. But I think that he is built in a more athletic way now. You can see him on the very right. You see T.Y. McGill. That's a typical nose tackle build. You've got the big base and all that. Javon Kinlaw is longer now. And there's a reason why the 49ers actually played Javon Kinlaw in a defensive end alignment on one of the one-on-ones in practice this week. And that's because I think they see some snaps where he can be there on the outside. I mean, you just saw him beat Kerry Hyder, who's played some defensive end, on a get-off drill. So they think that he now has the get-off, he now has the explosiveness, and he definitely has the length to play and moonlight at defensive end. So now you have a versatile lineman out of this guy because of the newfound health, because of the newfound explosiveness. And all you can hope, and you knock on wood here, is that Javon Kinlaw can stay healthy, because you don't wish injury on anyone. And you've talked to John Lynch and you talked to Chris Kasarik, especially Kasarik, the amount of respect they have for Javon Kinlaw and how hard he worked. I mean, Drake Jackson lived in the facility this offseason. He lived in the gym. He wouldn't stop working out. He's 15 pounds stronger now as a result. Javon Kinlaw was one of the guys that was also there. It was Kinlaw and Drake Jackson. I mean, Javon is motivated to put the injury past behind him. And so much of it was bad luck. Maybe all of it was bad luck. But he thinks this is his opportunity now. And so far, this leaned out version of his body has showed up at training camp. And it's been really, really cool to see. All right, the third big jump for the 49ers so far of training camp, because we're going through Trey Lance, we're going through Javon Kinlaw, and we're going through Ty Davis-Price. It's been Ty Davis-Price's burst. This is something that's really, really hard to get on camera because they don't let us film the team drills, but I mean, you've probably seen it in some of the 49ers videos, although the sizzle reels mix slow motion and fast motion. So probably you might have to wait until Sunday when the 49ers take on the Raiders, or those of you who have been at practice might have seen. I think that the reports here have been consistent across the board. TDP looks like a different football player. The other day, I tweeted a quote from Jake Brendel, and I'll read this quote to you because I think it encapsulates exactly how everybody who has seen Ty Davis Price feels. This is it from 49ers center Jake Brendel. Quote, "It's night and day. It's almost unbelievable how much he's progressed. Every time you see him run at a safety, it's like, what's going to happen there?" And this is why, because this guy is moving fast, but he's also 228 pounds. He's heavier than almost every safety in the game. He's heavier than most linebackers in the game now. Yet he's moving at a DB type speed. He's moving at a real running back speed. Last year, Ty Davis Price was about 215, and he still had some fat on him, some baby fat on him, if you will. Came out of LSU. Yeah, you can run over people at LSU at 215, a little bit of baby fat. It's going to be a lot harder to do that and stay healthy in the NFL if you're not at prime optimal condition, because everybody in the NFL that's trying to tackle you was the best guy on their college team. So Ty Davis Price shows up, sees what happened the first year, high ankle sprain, really derailed his season. 49ers traded for Christian McCaffrey, knocked him down the pecking order. He worked like a madman this offseason. And he actually cut fat, yet he went from 215 pounds to 228 pounds. That only works if you add muscle. He added 13 pounds of muscle. And, I mean, if you've never worked out in your life, you know, and you've just been kind of sitting around the couch and then you start working out, yeah, adding 13 pounds of muscle is not going to be the biggest of deals. But if you're already a finely tuned athlete, and I'm not pretending that Ty Davis Price was fat or anything when he came in, but he still had a little bit of that extra chunk on. If you're a finely tuned athlete coming out of the SEC to the NFL, adding 13 pounds of muscle is a huge deal. It's a testament to work ethic. It's a testament to focus. And it's going to be a testament to how Ty Davis Price is running now once you see him in real game action on Sunday. Because if practice is any indication, it's going to be scary for any safety or even any linebacker to step in front of him. 228 with muscle for Ty Davis Price is such a big advancement physically that I think it could completely change the types of plays the 49ers call for him. It's not just, oh, big back, let's see what he can do. Let's see if he can bowl people over on the inside zone. This is draw plays. This is true outside zone. He's going to be able to hit the edge. This is going to be exactly what Shanahan needs. And what Shanahan really needs is somebody who could spell Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey is the best combo back in the league, right? He can catch passes out of the backfield. He can run the football as well. You don't know what he's going to do. Whenever McCaffrey takes a breather, the guy behind him better be ready to deliver the same threat, or at least a similar threat. The guy behind him better be able to catch out of the backfield. Trey Lance's very first pass of this camp, very first completion, was a long wheel route out of the backfield to Ty Davis Price. How's that for foreshadowing? And how's that for tying together the three things that we are talking about today? The three things that we're talking about today, of course, are Ty Davis Price, Trey Lance, and Javon Kinlaw. The three 49ers who have made the biggest jumps so far of training camp. All right, a few minutes of questions, and then I am off to dinner. So how about a 49ers Q&A? We got a record size here. 660 of you. Just not get it to 666, and we'll be good. Or if we get it to 666, why don't we have it cross that number so it doesn't get stuck there? So there's like a new Exorcist movie coming out. I'm watching Oppenheimer, and then one of the trailers, I heard that Exorcist music. I'm like, oh, God, don't know if I want to watch the trailer of this. Good. We went from 661 to 670. We skipped over it. I love it. Post your questions. Smash the like button. Do all that good stuff. Eddie Dominguez, will this defense be better than the 2019 one? Eddie thinks they will be. I think on paper they definitely can be because you have Javon Hargrave. He's a better pass rusher than DeForest Buckner was. But you don't have Dee Ford. And at its peak, the 2019 defense had Dee Ford and Nick Bosa. That being said, maybe Drake Jackson takes that massive leap. I think Justin Houston just signed elsewhere, right, for $7 million. So both Justin Houston and Yannick Ngakoue signed elsewhere for prices that were outside the 49ers range. I spitballed the 49ers range a few months ago when I said they might sign another edge rusher. I said, it's probably not going to be more than $5 million. And even that, I was like, that's a little high for a team up against the cap. They got to sign Bosa first, too. So anyway, the 49ers are relying on in-house options opposite of Nick Bosa. They're also relying on Nick Bosa to show up to training camp. I would expect that to happen at some point this month. But anyway, you somehow, some way need to find that counterbalance to Bosa if you want to challenge the 2019 unit. If you do, then Bosa's better than he was then. Warner is now a veteran. He's not a second-year linebacker. Greenlaw's not a rookie anymore. And I do think that Steve Wilks can make this secondary better than it was back then. I mean, you've got Hufanga. You got all-pro at safety now. You didn't have an all-pro at safety back in 2019. You got Charvarius Ward. I think he's more in his prime than Richard Sherman was, although Sherman was great for most of that season. And at cornerback, too, you've got Deommodore Lenoir. You're not dealing with, what was it, Akello Witherspoon and a rookie Emmanuel Mosley back in 2019. So, or maybe a second-year Emmanuel Mosley, right? He came into the league and he might have been on the team in 18. I can't remember if he entered at 18 or 19, but still, he was young. And I do think the 49ers are better equipped on the back end. And Steve Wilks, he could add some exotic blitzes. He's an experienced defensive coordinator. They can be better, but can does not equal will. And, I'm not going to read too far into it, but this right here, at training camp, all these quarterbacks having success, that, there's an adjustment period for Steve Wilks calling this defense, communicating with his players. He also doesn't have Nick Bosa. But these completion rates across the board for 49ers QBs do suggest one of two things, or maybe they suggest both of these things, that A, the 49ers quarterbacks are playing really, really well, and B, maybe that defense needs to tighten the screws a little bit. And maybe not having Nick Bosa is the primary reason behind these completion percentages. Maybe both of those things are true at once. But for the 49ers defense to be better than the 2019 one, they definitely are going to have to tighten the screws against the pass game. And, again, I can't repeat the importance of the return of Nick Bosa enough for that. What do I think of Marcelino McCrary-Ball? I think he might be your number 3 linebacker. I mean, he's getting reps with the ones. He has an interception this camp. He has a nice pass breakup this camp. He has a dropped interception this camp as well. He's been all over the field. The guy's buff as hell. He might be the best interview on the 49ers team. I think he might be in the lead for that number 3 linebacker role. That's not taking anything away from Jalen Graham and D. Winters, the 2 rookies, but they might be in McCrary-Ball's spot from last year, having to develop on the practice squad before being legitimate contenders in 2024. Jake Jackson is definitely on pace to play opposite Nick Bosa. He's getting those snaps right now. I mean, we talk about the big jump that Javon Kinlaw made this offseason. I could have included Drake Jackson in somebody who'd made big jumps, but I still need to see him in actual gameplay, see some more sacks happen. I also want to see the endurance better for Drake Jackson, because by the end of last season, Drake was inactive for almost every single game. He just run out of gas as a rookie. It's a 20-game marathon. It's not easy. I'm sure this happened back in the day. So after Tom Brady took the job and won, there were still calls for the Patriots to go back to Bledsoe. It's a funny little footnote in history. Thankfully, Twitter didn't exist back then, so we didn't have a lot of that idiocy broadcast far and wide. YouTube didn't exist either. This is back in 2000, 2001. Fun fact, Tom Brady's first NFL game in uniform in the preseason was the Hall of Fame game in 2000 against the 49ers. Another fun fact is that the 2000 Patriots, who played the 49ers in the Hall of Fame game that preseason, the Patriots actually carried 4 quarterbacks on their 53-man roster. The 4th quarterback was Tom Brady. So carrying 4 quarterbacks cannot be ruled completely out of the picture for the 49ers. It might be unlikely, but it's definitely not something that you could just say, okay, that won't happen. The 49ers view quarterbacks as currency, and they'll continue to maintain the optionality at the position until something has to budge. And it might be that something does budge right around the roster cut-down deadline. I can't believe that I do a whole show. I'm talking for 40 minutes about how Trey Lance is improving, and then we get comments like this. They just recoup their losses. Toss their hand up in there. They haven't lost anything with Trey Lance right now. I mean, every quarterback and any player you draft is an investment. Some investments will end up paying dividends. Some will pay dividends immediately. Some will take years to pay dividends. Some will end up paying dividends for somebody else because you do have to let them go. But every single player in the draft is an investment, and not all investments pan out. It's just the way it is. So Lance was one of the throws at the dart throws at the wall, right? If you judged, and this is not directly aimed at this comment, but this is aimed at the general comment saying that this was a terrible acquisition of Trey Lance. If you judged, somebody who's trading in the stock market based on one of their stocks instead of their whole portfolio, and say that their whole portfolio is netting you 40% a year, but one stock did poorly, but they still gained 40% in a year, you wouldn't be a very good judge of how that person navigates the stock market, right? That's where the 49ers are right now with Trey Lance. Their entire portfolio in the draft looks really good. The Lance pick has not yielded returns yet, but still, despite that, the whole portfolio looks good. And there's still a chance that Trey Lance stock, in fact, there are indicators that Trey Lance stock is going to shoot on up. It has shot on up as far as practice goes. So look at it like the stock market. Look at it like a full portfolio. And don't write a guy off at a point where it makes no sense for the 49ers to write him off. He still has to build up his value because quarterbacks are currency. Quarterbacks are stocks. Let's put it that way. They're currency, they're stocks, they're holdings. The 49ers have, the 49ers have this much invested in Trey Lance, and they hope that the value of it will increase. Shane, look what happened to Alex Smith. Yep, his stock increased later in his career. That's for sure. And you could put the same mentality on Sam Darnold. I mean, Kyle Shanahan has compared the Darnold and Steve Young situations before. It's not a ridiculous comparison. He's not saying Darnold's going to become Steve Young. He's saying that Steve Young was terrible before he came to Bill Walsh and the 49ers, and that helped turn around his career. The system matters. The coach matters. The quarterback matters. The play calling matters. The teammates matter. It all matters. This is a team sport. People view quarterbacks on an individual level, but that's why they always get it wrong, because it's a team sport. You have to have it all. You have to have the whole machine working. Look how bad Patrick Mahomes looked in the Super Bowl in 2020, February 2021. Look how bad Mahomes looked in the Super Bowl that year. He didn't have an offensive line. What was it, 9 sacks? He looked absolutely atrocious. And they got blown out by the Buccaneers. I don't think anybody at that point was saying that Brady was a better quarterback than Mahomes. Brady had, 43 or 44? Mahomes obviously more talented, but Brady had the team around him. And that's nothing against Tom Brady. It's a team sport. Trying to make this an individual sport is not understanding the game of football. Big Who says they hyped Lance up way too much when he was drafted, put way too much pressure. I don't think they hyped him up that much. I think a lot of fans hyped him up because they didn't like Jimmy Garoppolo. I was one of the people that said pump the brakes on declaring Trey Lance a starter when they're obviously not going to start him in week 1. Chuck, Darnold had a great college career, yeah, and Kyle Shanahan saw that. And he could still have a good pro career. You shouldn't write anybody out who has that kind of arm talent. And yes, if Purdy starts week 1, the 49ers would always be one play away from needing Trey Lance to start. That's it. You need the deep quarterback room. It's unbelievable to me that 49ers fans seem to be the last people to realize this, because didn't you just go through the disaster that was 2022 when the NFC Championship game ended in a smoldering pile of ruins because all your quarterbacks got hurt? So you need the cool QBs. There's no way around it. I think there were only 5 QBs, or maybe 7, but you could count it, with one digit in the entire NFL last year who started all 17 regular season games. So the likelihood is that you're going to need your quarterback too. It's as simple as that. So the QB2 battle that's happening at 49ers camp between Sam Darnold, Trey Lance, and Brandon Allen is extremely, extremely important. All right, everybody, thank you for watching. We are at 49 minutes, and I think 49 minutes is the perfect length for the show. Everybody smash the like button. Hit the sub button as well. I'm sure we picked up a lot. I think that I can even get that onto the show. Yeah, so subscribe to The Athletic. Do that. But subscribe to the channel. Do that as well. 700 of you on. I think it's a good opportunity for that to happen right now. So hit it now, hit the notification bell, be back out at practice tomorrow morning. Hope you enjoyed everything, and we will see you next time. Thanks, everybody. Have a great Sunday dinner.